Hi, I'm Gaurav Vasisht, also known as Professor G. I am a teacher at Leap Waters. Today's topic is going to be very exciting because I'm talking about how you can learn anything at all in 20 hours. Would you believe that? 20 hours, and I'm going to teach you right here, and let's try to understand this topic. So how long does it take to acquire a new skill? You know what I found? 10,000 hours. Anybody ever heard this? It takes 10,000 hours if you want to learn something new. If you want to be good at it, it's going to take 10,000 hours to get there. Now this is what we have been told. I read this in book after book, in website after website, and I was, my mental experience of reading all this stuff was like, no way, I don't have time. I don't have 10,000 hours. I'm never going to be able to learn anything new. Now that was a worrying thought, but that's not true. So let's try to understand. Let's put a perspective to this. How much is 10,000 hours? Just to give you a rough order of magnitude, 10,000 hours is a full-time job for 5 years. That's a long time. And we've all had that experience of learning something new. And it didn't take us anywhere close to that amount of time, right? We've learned things before and it doesn't take that long. So what's up? There's something kind of funky going on over here. What we're reading is maybe not true. What the research says and what we expect and have experiences, they're not matching up. There's something missing. So what's that missing, part of that puzzle? So what I found, and here's the catch. The 10,000 hours rule came out of studies of expert level performance. There's a professor at Florida State University. His name is Anders Ericsson. He is the originator of the 10,000 rule. And where that came from is he studied professional. And where that came from was he studied professional athletes, world-class musicians, chess grandmasters, all of this ultra competitive folks in ultra high performing fields. And he tried to figure out how long does it take to get to the top of those kind of fields, the absolute top. And what he found out is that the more deliberate practice, the more time that those individuals spend practicing the elements of whatever it is that they do, the more time you spend, the better you get. That was the premises. And the folks at the top of their fields put in around 10,000 hours of practice. So he was right. But I'm like a geeky guy, I want to keep learning things. I want to keep growing. So what I decided was, to do was, I went to the library. I would go to the bookstore. I would look at research and what it says about how we learn and how we learn quickly. And I read a whole bunch of books. I read a bunch of websites. And I tried to answer this question. So what did I figure out? I figured out after a lot of deliberation, that with a little bit of practice, now hear me out, with a little bit of practice, we get better and better and better. And that's the early part of practice. Really, really the early part. We get really efficient. People get good at things with just a little bit of practice. Now, what's interesting to note is, for skills that we want to learn for ourselves, we don't care so much about time, right? We just care how good we are, whatever good happens to mean for us, So we are looking at how good we are, whatever that might mean for every one of us. With a little bit of practice, you get really good, really quick. So that early level of improvement is really fast, and that and then at a certain point, you reach a plateau. And the subsequent levels become much harder to get. So the earlier learning curve is much, much faster. So later on, it takes more time. So my question is, how long does it take from starting something and being grossly incompetent at it to knowing it to be reasonably good? How do you get from not knowing something to be reasonably good at it in hopefully as short a time as possible? So how long does it take to learn something? And here's what my research says: 20 hours. That's it. You can go from knowing nothing about any skill that you can think of, nothing, to being able to learn that skill successfully. Want to learn a language? Want to learn how to draw? Want to learn how to run a marathon? Why not? 20 hours is all it takes. So if you put 20 hours of focused, now hear me out, focused, deliberate practice into, whatever skill you want to learn, you will be astounded at how good you are. 20 hours is doable, guys. 20 hours is doable. That's just about 45 minutes a day for about a month. Even skipping a couple of days here and there, that should be just about it. 45 minutes a day for about a month. 20 hours isn't that hard to accumulate. But there has to be a method, right? Yes, there is a method to do this, because it's not going to be like you can just start fiddling around for about 20 hours and expect these massive improvements. There's a way to practice intelligently. There's a way to practice efficiently. There will, the efficiency that will make sure that you invest those 20 hours in the most effective way that you possibly can. And here's the method. And remember this applies to anything. There are 4 components of this methodology. 20 hours, right? We're talking about. The first is to deconstruct the skill. Decide exactly what you want to be able to do when you're done. And then look into the skill and break it down into smaller pieces. Now we're looking at smaller pieces, right? Most of the things that we think of as skills are actually big bundles of skills that require all sorts of different things. The more you can break apart that skill, the more you're able to decide what are the parts of the skill that would actually help me to get where I want, what I want. Then you practice those first. And if you practice the most important things first, you'll be able to improve your performance in the least amount of time possible. Sounds good? The second, the first and the second, learn enough to self-correct. So get 3 to 5 good resources about what it is you're trying to learn. Could be a book, audiobook, could be courses, could be anything. But going through resources should not be an excuse. Don't use that as an excuse, as a way to procrastinate on practice. It doesn't mean that you get like 20 books about the topic that you want to learn and say something like, hey, I'm going to start learning how to program a computer when I complete these 20 books. No, that's procrastination. What you want to do is learn just enough that you can actually practice and self-correct or self-edit as you practice. So the learning becomes a way of getting better at noticing when you're making a mistake and then doing something a little different. So the point 2 is all about, correcting those mistakes. The third is to remove barriers to practice. You would be wondering, what are those barriers? Distractions, television, internet, especially that mobile phone. All of those things that get in the way of you actually sitting down and doing the work. And the more you're able to use just a little bit of willpower to remove the distractions that are keeping you from practicing, the more likely you are to actually sit down and practice, right? It makes sense, right? The fourth is to practice for at least 20 hours. It's all about 20 hours, right? So most skills have what I call a frustration barrier. The grossly incompetent and knowing in part. That's really, really frustrating. We don't like to feel stupid, and feeling stupid is a barrier to us actually sitting down and doing the work. So by pre-committing to practicing, whatever it is that you want to do for at least 20 hours, you will be able to overcome that initial frustration barrier and stick with the practice long enough to actually reap the rewards. That's it, guys. Not rocket science. 4 very simple steps that you can use to learn absolutely anything. And it's amazing. Pretty much anything that you can think of. Anything that you can think of. What do you want to do? You can do. The major barrier to learn something new is not intellectual. It's not the process of you learning a bunch of little tips or tricks or things. The major barrier is emotional. We're scared. Feeling stupid doesn't feel good. In the beginning of learning anything new, you feel really stupid. So the major barrier is not intellectual, it's emotional. But put 20 hours into anything, it doesn't matter then. What do you want to what do you want to learn? Do you want to learn a language? Do you want to learn how to cook? Do you want to learn how to draw? What turns you on? What lights you up? Go out and do that thing. And guess what? It only takes 20 hours.